Hi, what I'd like to do today is a very brief review of just red blood cells and a little bit about anemia and how we look at anemia. All right, so first off, what we really need to know is a definition. Okay, so we have two words here, polycythemia and anemia. All right, let's start out with just the medical terms. Poly, anytime you see that, poly means too many or many. Okay, in this case, cyth, C-Y-T-H, means cell. That's it. And emia means blood. All right, so what that means is we have blood, cell, too many. Polycythemia. So if this was your normal blood smear, then polycythemia would be a whole bunch more of these red blood cells all piled in there, and then maybe even piled on top of each other. And it kind of looks like that under a microscope. It looks like you have a bunch of red blood cells just unfocused and piled on top of each other. Okay, and I'll get back to polycythemia in a second. Okay, on the other hand, if we have anemia or anemia, we say, an means less. Okay, anemia, less what? Less blood. Okay, in this case, maybe our blood smear only looks like this. Okay, well, it looks like a nose. Okay, we don't want that. All right, so let's move on to this definition. Anemia, again, strictly defined as a decrease in red blood cell mass, but of course, if you have less red blood cells, you have less red blood cell mass or weight. Okay, always accompanied by a decrease in oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. Why? Because that's what blood does. Red blood cells carry oxygen. That's one of their main purposes. So therefore, if you have less red blood cells, you carry less oxygen, and therefore you're going to be very out of breath, among other things. Now, when we classify anemia, we look at three things. Okay, you look at the size or the volume, and we look at the hemoglobin or the color. The reason we look at hemoglobin, and it's the same as color, is because hemoglobin is that protein, that structural protein that gives red blood cells the red color. Okay, because heme, by the way, H-E-M-E, actually means red, and that's why we use it to describe like blood. Okay, so first off, let's go with normal. What do you think normal means? Well, it means normal, all right, normal. Okay, so if this is your normal size red blood cell, you would say that is a normal cell. Okay, so that would be a normal cytic, as in the size of that thing would be normal cytic. Got it? Okay, now the color of that thing, we have to give it some color. Well, I don't really have a colored pen right now, but let's say that color, I'm going to measure more like and how much I shade this thing. How's that? Okay, so that's my density of actually hemoglobin in there that gives it its color. Okay, so that's my normal color. Okay, now what if I took the same cell and I made it smaller, tiny? Okay, well, if I made it tiny, we would call it microcytic. Okay, so now that's a microcytic cell. And what do you think is going to happen to the color? Well, in a microcytic cell, you can't fit as much hemoglobin in there, so it's going to be more pale. So you see how this little one is less dense than the normal size one? Therefore, we call it hypochromic also. Okay, where the first one was a normal chromic or normal color. Now this one's hypochromic or pale. Okay, that little small red blood cell that is microcytic and hypochromic, typically we relate that to a iron deficiency, as in we don't have enough iron in our blood. Why? Because you need iron to make hemoglobin, you need hemoglobin to make color, and without enough iron and hemoglobin, you can't build a big enough cell. Okay, now sometimes we are going to have a problem where you have your red blood cell is too big. Okay, we will call that macrocytic. Macro means big. All right, so if you have a macrocytic cell, notice that we don't have a hyperchromic cell. You can't have too much color in a red blood cell. All right, and the reason again goes back to the whole iron and hemoglobin, where you need iron and hemoglobin is a color. But if you take that, you notice you're going to have a lot more hemoglobin if you were to count up these little things that I'm doing very unscientifically, and you were to compare it, you would find that I threw a lot more lines in there, a lot more hemoglobin in that cell compared to the normal one over here. But also notice that they're about the same density. If you step back a little bit and look at the density that I drew, they're the same. So you can't have a hyperchromic cell, but you can have a macrocytic cell. And usually, by the way, when you see a macrocytic normal, or oops, wrong one, normal cytic cell, a macrocytic normal chromic cell is what I meant to say, then that usually is either vitamin B12 deficiency anemia, or you don't have enough folate, or a folate deficiency anemia. And you know what? I've already gone on too far for too long, so let's just go ahead and stop this presentation here, and we'll pick up later.